Yeah, I'm Dave. Someone said good morning, Dave. I appreciate that if you didn't know already. I'd like to start by reading a psalm that I'm sure that everybody is very familiar with. And one I think that David wrote either as a shepherd boy or reflecting upon his time as a shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside resting waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of shadow of death or darkness, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and steadfast love shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Father God, I again want to come to you and thank you that you are a God who is merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. And that your glory, your goodness is revealed in Jesus. That's why we're here. That's what we're celebrating today, that he rose again from the dead after he revealed you lifted up on the cross. And may we look and live. And yet, David is speaking here of something that is such a significant theme throughout all of Scripture. Fear and faith. And Lord, you see David's faith and his heart for you. May this time that we spend in the Word, dwelling and learning and seeing and getting another glimpse of you, draw our hearts to you, and may we be more faithful people than we were before. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So fear and faith. And you've heard me talk about this quite a bit. Excuse me. Ice in my mouth. Fear and faith quite a bit. And it's a significant thing in all of Scripture. Moses ends his farewell sermon many times. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And fear comes along with this idea of forgetting. Remember in Deuteronomy. It's because in fear, we forget. We forget what God has promised, how he's kept his word, what he has declared to us, and what he will do in the future for us. We forget. And it's very self-concerning. Fear is always self-protective. That's the nature of it. And yet faith is trust. It's selfless. It's remembering. It's giving thanks. And that's the reason why so often in the New Testament, I think we're called as Christians to give thanks in all things because we get to remember God's faithfulness. So fear versus faith. In every moment of every day, we either can live by faith or we can live by fear. And I've had lots of stories to tell about that in my life. It is every moment, every day. But one of the things is when I was a mentor teacher in Cordeo in England, we on a Thursday morning got to do this thing called Mentor's Corner. And it was a time to just sit with 6 guys and talk about something that was deeply personal to us or something that was going to be practical that they could take with us, just whatever was on our hearts at the time. And when I got there in January of 2013, it was a kind of a freaky thing because when my mentor, the teacher that I've sat under for years, invited me to fly and take my whole family across the world to replace him in this ministry, which was kind of daunting. If you've met Ron, there's no way I could really fill his shoes. It's impossible. And then another guy, Peter, he kind of risked his ministry too, listening to Ron to take me over. So when I got there, I was a little bit nervous to teach. Because what if, if I didn't measure up? I've risked all these things, I've spent all this money, I've done all this, and what if it's just kayak.com, time to go back home, So the first time I was asked to teach was at a mentor's course on a Thursday. and it was on fear and faith. And all the guys after that listened to it, they kept on asking me to teach that over again. And I've mentioned the story about how miraculously God got us to Scotland, and then God kept us there. We had a choice either to leave in fear or to remain in faith, and God was faithful. And I was going to use that story, but I was so afraid of not pleasing Ron and Peter that I had a massive migraine all day. I was scared to death. All my insecurities, I was going to fail and all these things. And here I am supposed to be teaching on fear and faith. So the first thing I had to say, guys, I am scared to death right now. There's the teacher right over there, and I look up to him. He's the best teacher I've ever had. He wants me to fill in for him. And this guy has risked everything to have me over. And here I am. And I talked about fear and faith for an hour, and then I went and threw up in the toilet because I was so stressed out about it from the migraine. But it was an incredible, again, it was another opportunity to just reveal what is so true about all of us, that every moment of every day we either can live by faith or we live by fear. And it all goes back to Genesis 3. So what happened? After, Adam saw Eve, and he went yabba dabba doo, and they became one, right? They were naked, and they were not ashamed. And then they believed in the lie, that you can be like God, and God is holding out on you. And they tasted of the tree, and they discovered that they were naked, and they began, in the awkwardness and the anxiety of being naked, started to fig leaf. They covered up, they were afraid of God, and they're hiding in the bushes and blaming each other or the other for what took place. And so, by nature, in Adam's flesh, no one's good, no one's righteous, no, not one. We can never seek God because we're really just all consumed about self. The Spirit left us in the garden, and the vacuum that filled it was just a love for self. Fancy term that Luther and Augustine talk about, incurvatus in se, that is curved in on oneself. That's the nature of sin. And it's all fear-based. All of it. And we're in the business of fig leafing. And fig leafing it's so subtle and yet it's so various. If you went to school at all, the bully was really acting in fear, wasn't he? He is just a paper tiger, just totally fig leafing a big, nasty, bully kind of thing, stealing your money. But also the quiet, weak, kind of quiet person is also self-protective and fear-based. The one who's given the money to the bully is also fear-based. And the proud, the boastful, that also could be very fear-based, kind of fig leafing. And then the passive-aggressive one, see, it's all the same. It's all the same kind of symptoms of a similar problem. That is, we don't want to feel like we're not good enough. We don't want to feel like we're not lovable. We want to feel like we're a failure, which is what my fear was that morning when I was teaching about fear and faith. I'm going to fail, and then I'm going to be sent home. So that is a big thing that we're going to be looking at today. So because we're going to continue the series in 1 Samuel, A Heart for God. And just to recap, what we've seen is that Saul is kind of on his downward cycle, isn't he? He's already been rejected by God. God's already said, I'm going to get a man after my own heart. And he said, you're not only is the kingdom going to be taken away from your family, but you are no longer going to be king, Saul. And why is that? Well, first is he's tall and he's handsome, he looks the part. But then what? He's hiding in the baggage. He's afraid. He's constantly afraid. That's the reason why he ignores the scripture that he's copied. That's why he's violated it. That's the reason why but yet at the same time, he kind of wants to make he wants to be puffed up and make a monument after himself. Take all the credit that God has done after some victories over the Philistines. Yet they didn't have victory over the Philistines fully because he made stupid vows, which is actually out of fear and trying to control things. And so what happens is Samuel grieves and cries over Saul's sin. And then he confronts his sin. And then he hacks the sin up, called Agag, right? And then we saw last week, David comes on the scene. There's this dramatic difference. No longer grieve over Saul, because his heart isn't with me. He's not a man after my own heart. I'm going to raise up somebody else. And he uses a spirit of evilness upon Saul to raise up David into the place of nobility. He's going to be the armor bearer of Saul, and he's going to soothe his soul. And that's where we ended. And today we're going to go into a text that if you spent any time as a kid in church, you know very well. David and Goliath. Which I think is a really poor name for the story, actually. The culture has totally messed up this story. It's about the underdog, and the underdog beating the big tough guy and everything. And by the way, as a sports fan, I love underdog story. I mean, I love the underdog. I love the great comeback. I mean, what was the last Super Bowl I watched? I mean, it was the last Super Bowl, you know. I wanted the Patriots to come back and then lose. I really didn't like the Patriots, you know. So I wanted them to come back and have that great comeback story in the last minute, botch it because they beat the Seahawks a couple of years ago. Anyway, that's not the story of David and Goliath. Actually, the story is God versus Goliath. And David just happens to join in. So if you will, if you haven't already, turn to 1 Samuel 17 with me. And just the first 3 verses, this kind of gives a setting that we're probably maybe familiar with. The Philistines again come to have battle with the Israelites, and they are kind of up in the north, and the Israelites are in the south. And there's this valley of Elah that goes from Bethlehem to Succoth and make sure I said Ezekah, and it's about 12 miles away. Bethlehem is about 12 miles from where they're encamped. And the Philistines are on one side of the valley on the ridge, and the Israelites are on the other. Okay? And this valley is called the Valley of Elah, and there's a battle line between them. They're waiting to fight each other. And so, we'll just pick it up in verse 4. So then there came out of the camp the Philistines, a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. A cubit is about 18 inches, so he's about 9 feet. And a span is about 9 inches, so a span is like a span from your thumb to your pinky. About 9 inches. From here to there is a cubit, 18 inches. That's typically how they measured it. So 9 feet, 9 inches. Now you can go into all the reasons why, but you know, there are people still today that grow that large for various reasons. But it's just, he's a big guy. And Goliath actually could be just a title of a champion, of a Philistine. It's not necessarily his personal name, even though we can see it says the name of Goliath. This could just be a title of the champion. And so then the narrator here gives us an incredible, huge, massive description of his armor. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels, which is heavy, very, very heavy. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders, and the staff of the spear that was a weaver's beam, and his spear's head was 600 shekels, which is also very heavy, and his shield bearer went with him. So there's another guy holding the shield that went before him. You can just imagine this guy was really weighed down with a lot of armor. And this armor comes from all over the known world. This is really high-tech stuff. So he is greatly armored by the ingenuity of man. And so that is Goliath in verse 8, he stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not the Philistine? Are you not servants or slaves of Saul? Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and call him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all of Israel heard these words, they got their swords and got ready to fight and went to business. Oh, wait, no, what did it say? They were dismayed and greatly afraid. So here's what I think sometimes we miss this in the West because we are not a honor-shame culture. We are an innocent guilt culture. And what Goliath is doing here is shaming Israel. He is saying, you are not good. Essentially, he's saying, your you're sinful in some ways. It's hard for us to get this in our culture. You are not worthy of honor, and that is the worst thing you could possibly be. You're weak and feeble. And when he's saying this, when he says, I defy the ranks of Israel, this day he is defying and bringing reproach upon Israel and their God. That's what he's doing. He's mocking them. And he's mocking God. And he knows it. Because this is not a really deal here. If we fight, then we'll stop and we'll be your servants. Because we see at the end of this, we'll see that isn't the case. This is just purely to bring mockery upon God, upon Yahweh and his people. To kind of get a fight going, to make them afraid. And guess what? They did. They were deeply, deeply afraid. So, we're going to see here is like, well, why is everybody afraid? And then all of a sudden, we go off and we change. So we read my summary of the first 11 verses here. I put it this way. The enemies of the Lord will defy him. But will the people be afraid, or will the people faithfully join God? And we're going to see what's going on here. Because right now we're seeing that Saul is true to form and runs away and is afraid and all his people follow him. Now, it changes stories here because David, it gives another description of David. He's the son of Jesse. He's the youngest of 8. The 3 of the oldest brothers, they're all in with Saul fighting. And David is going back and forth from Bethlehem to where Saul is. Because remember, Saul is in the court, or David's in the courts playing music to soothe Saul's soul. And so David is doing double duty. He's with Saul doing those things, and then he's also with his father taking care of the sheep because he's still responsible as a shepherd. So he's going back and forth these 12 miles. And just to make sure you get how long this is going on, it's in 16 is kind of a standalone verse. For 40 days the Philistine came forward and stood out and mocked Israel night and day. Night and day, all day, he's mocking them. And the other reason why I think they're telling the stories is because David's busy going back and forth, working like crazy, and he is not aware of this going on, that God is being dishonored by a Philistine. Because you think, where's Jonathan in this? Where's Jonathan? Do you remember Jonathan in chapter, 14? Him and an armor bearer coming down to the bottom of a valley, say, hey, if they call us up and stay in their position of strength, the Lord is with us, and we're going to go take out 36,000 people. And it wasn't because Jonathan thought that he was going to take out 36,000 people. It's because he remembered God's promises. Deuteronomy 28:7 says that if you faithfully follow me, and when an enemy comes into the land, I will deliver you from them. And so Jonathan says, hey, God promises he'll deliver us. It could be just us. Let's go. And God delivers them, and they have a great victory, except for Saul's stupid vow. And so where's Jonathan? Where's Jonathan? I think Saul has got him hid away. It's been said that, you, son, are not going to be a king, and the kingdom is going to be taken away from me. I'm going to hide you away. Because you're going to go fight the Goliath guy, and you're going to die. So we're going to hide you away. And so then the other faithful person we're going to see is busy working and has no idea that Goliath is mocking Israel for 40 days, night and day. Until, and then it goes in verse 17. And then in verse 17 it kind of gives the fact that David, while he's going back and forth, every time he came back, he was bringing food and provisions for his brother and for the army. And then it says in verse 19, now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. The scene is set. Right? The scene is set. Men are afraid. God is being mocked. And if you remember, if those have been reading Samuel, 1 Samuel, I think 2:30, I believe, when Eli is being removed as a high priest, God says, those who honor me will be honored. Those who despise me and defy me will be destroyed. And that tension should be us feeling going, whoa, okay, what's going on here? And I think what's happening here is God is waiting for someone to join him in defeating Goliath. Who's going to come? Who's going to be there? Because the reality is God has never just wiped people out except for, well, the Noah story. Apart from an army, his men, his people. That's how God works. And so God is just waiting. Who is going to be faithfully going to come to that? And so then in verse 20, David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took provisions and went. So there he goes. He's coming back as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the encampment of the host was going on to the battle line and shouting the war cry. And Israel and the Philistines drew up to the battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage. So he left and ran to the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. And as he talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And the key thing is that this time, David heard them. David heard them. And so he started going around. He said, so then all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, that is the Goliath, they fled from him and were much afraid. So everybody's afraid. David hears it, and then he sees everybody's response. They run away. They're afraid and dismayed. And I think David's a little puzzled by this. What in the world is going on? And so the men of Israel said, have you seen this man? This man who has come? Surely he has come up to defy, reproach, diminish the honor of Israel. And the king, look at this, what the king will do. He will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. Translation. So the motives to get someone to fight for Israel isn't the honor of the Lord, it's personal benefit. You're going to be enriched. You're going to become part of the family of the king. And you're going to get free taxes the rest of your life. That's free in Israel. It's free taxes. Your family, your whole family, will never have to pay taxes again. That's the ambition. And does anybody show up for that? Not a soul. Not a soul. You're going to get all the glory and the reputation and freeness and a beautiful wife to be part of the kingdom, or the Saul's kingdom, and nobody shows up. And then David said to the man who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine? The last time that's been come up was Jonathan, just before he took out the Philistines with God. That he should bring reproach on the armies of the living God. The people answered him the same way. So shall it be done to the man who kills him, the same way as all the riches and all the benefits. And David's like, I think he's saying, these are not the reasons why we should be fighting Israel. Or the Goliath. We're fighting him because he's brought reproach against the Lord. This is an incredible problem. Doesn't everybody remember the promises? It doesn't remember that God has delivered us from the Philistines many times? And even when we lost back in the day with Eli, Yahweh and the temple of Dagon destroyed Dagon, and they got rid of him because they all said, this God we can't handle. See, even God who gave us over to the Philistines, he is still a God above these people. And why are we doing this? Now, Eliab, the eldest brother, heard what David when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger kindled against David. He said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left those sheep in the wilderness? That's mocking him as well as bringing shame against David. You low-life shepherd boy. What are you doing here? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart. For you have come down to see the battle. You have come down to see blood. This is interesting. Because we know, right, that David was anointed, right? And God said that I'm going to have a man after my own heart who's going to be the next king, and he anoints David. What does Eliab see in David that he thinks he's being disobedient to God? That's what presumption and evil heart, kind of Hebrew idiom is kind of like, you're being defiant and disobedient to God because you're trying to get a battle to happen. Is Goliath responding by fear or by faith? Fear. He's protecting himself. I don't want to go to a battle. I don't want to fight the Goliath and all the Philistines and their advanced weaponry, because remember, they're still in the Israelites are still in the Bronze Age. Their swords are made out of bronze. And the Philistines have iron. And iron beats bronze every time. So they're the superpower. I don't want to fight. What you're doing this to cause a fight, David. You're bringing problems to me. I don't want to see this. This is going to upset my comfort, my security, what I need. And you're just picking a fight. See, Goliath doesn't care about the reproach that's been brought to the Lord. He doesn't care at all. All he cares about is living. That's it. And David says in verse 29, what have I done? I'm just asking a question. I'm literally just asking, that's what that means. Was it not but a word? I'm just asking a question. I'm saying, why are you all fearfully shaking right now? Why are you intimidated by men when you have the living God on your side? Why is that? Why is that? And he turned away from him, and he kept on going. Kept on saying these things. Hey, what's going on? Why is everybody afraid? Why is everybody afraid? And finally, the word gets around and he comes to Saul. In verse 31. And he said the same words. So David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight the Philistine, this Philistine. And Saul said to him, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. For you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went out after him and struck him and delivered it out of its mouth. And if he rose against me, I caught him by the beard, and I struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears in God's creation. Right? And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them. Why? For he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered him, or me, from the paw of the lion and from the paw of a bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Now, I have sat here and thought about this for a while. Like, what in the world? Saul, a fearful guy, is going to, send off a little boy to fight Goliath. And that doesn't seem to make sense to me. Because a fear-based guy wouldn't do something so faithful like that. Risking his kingdom, really. I think he sees something in David that he recognizes. I think he recognizes his son, Jonathan. And he's like, oh, what an opportunity here. What an opportunity. I get to protect Jonathan, and I get to put a man out there who seems like Jonathan to fight for us. Says, Lord be with you. Now, there's this incredible comic scene right after this. David is placed with all this armor on top of him. And it doesn't really fit, and David's like, I don't need the sword, this doesn't fit, I can't test these things. And in verse, towards the 39, he says, David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in the shepherd's pouch. And his sling was in his hand and approached the Philistine. Now, many people have tried to do all kinds of crazy things with these 5 smooth stones. 5 stones in your life for this, and then taking down the Goliath in your life, and all those. That is not going to happen, and I'm not going to say any of those things. He just had 5 stones, right? He might miss, and I think after 5, he might be a goner. So probably 5 is enough. He needs to be lightweight, anyways. And these stones are about tennis ball size, probably. And there's many ancient accounts of how accurate ancient sling throwers were. With the force and the velocity of it, it's a powerful weapon. That wasn't like some weak, feeble thing. So he felt pretty secure. He had his shepherd's staff in one hand and his sling in another. And now here comes the fight. The Philistine moved forward and came near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. And when the Philistine looked at David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you've come to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods, Dagon probably in particular. "Look at me, David, I am 9'9". I have all the most advanced armor before you, and by the way, I'm really weighted down by it. Are you just but a little dog? You're coming after me with a stick and some stones. How could you possibly do anything to me?" And then he says, the Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." See, I don't think we get this. He is totally shaming David. He is doing the most vile thing he could do. He's shaming David and he's shaming his God. And he said, "My God is better than you, and I'm better than you. Let's go. Let's have it out." And what have all the other men done when they heard this shame? They dismay, they run away, they disperse, they go in every direction they possibly can go. And what's the little ruddy, handsome boy do? The Philistine, then David said to him, and this is verse 45, "You come to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the Yahweh of armies." That's who I come in. The God of the armies, or the God of the battle line, is what he actually says. "Whom you have defied, whom you have reproached, whom you have shamed. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head." Yeah, that's proper. I don't know why kids' stories, they leave that out. It's the coolest part of the whole story. "And I will give you the dead bodies, and not just you, Goliath, but the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is God in Israel. And he's better than you, he's better than yours. And that all the assembly, everybody in all the nations may know that the Lord saves, not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." See, David is not saying, "This is my battle." He just happens to be the only one willing to join in God's battle against those who defy him. And this is what I find amazing. You get to see the Philistine kind of like, boom, slow, meandering up to the battle line to meet David in verse 48. David ran to the battle line to meet the Philistine. He put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck it in the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell on the ground, on his face to the ground. David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. Then David ran over to the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. I think that should jump off our page a little bit for us, because there's no description of Goliath having a sword. So when David said, "I'm going to cut your head off," there's no sword in it. But all of a sudden, there's a sword, and there it is. David cuts the head off with it. He has victory. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they didn't go, "Okay, now we're going to serve you." Did they? They fled. They had shame. Who gets to have honor? And the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath, the gates of Ekron, so that the wounded Philistines fell on the way from the Sharim as far as Gath and Ekron, and the people of Israel came back from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their camp. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And that's the story right there. Now, if I were to summarize this, there's some key words that continually came up in this passage. Defy, 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 defy. Or another way of reproach, reproach, reproach. And the other word is deliver, 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 deliver. And so the way that I would summarize this, that God delivers those who trust Him and join Him in His battle, and He destroys those who defy. It's pretty clear. And it was David's faith that God was waiting for to destroy the shame and the mockery that Goliath had been bringing upon him. Those who honor me will be honored. Those who defy me will be destroyed, as it says in 1 Samuel 2:30. And see, this is a theme that goes all throughout Scripture. This isn't just David and Goliath. Think of Abraham's faith. Genesis 22 kind of faith, which is, Abraham, I know you love your son Isaac, your only son whom you really greatly love. Now I want you to go to the mountain in Moriah and offer him as a sacrifice. Now, and then he just goes. Now this is totally uncharacteristic of Abraham, by the way. Because every time that he has been asked to do something with God, he sort of does it or doesn't do it or gives his wife away because he's trying to protect the promise that he's going to be a father of a great nation. Ishmael comes about because of some of the helping out of God. It doesn't go too well. I mean, how many times he gave his wife away twice to protect his loins, really. But after he receives Isaac at the age of 90 and sees Sarah giving birth to a boy at the age of 90, and probably 10, 15 years of reflecting all the ways that he fearfully helped God out, he thought, I know for a fact that this boy is the promised one. I know that God has kept His promise. So when I go to sacrifice him, either He's going to stop me or He's going to raise him from the dead. See, that's faith. That's trust. It was no longer fear. David was not intimidated by anybody. A whole army of fearful men, he was not intimidated by anyone. Why is that? Because he intimately knew God and His promises. He was the only little boy among thousands of men saying, what is going on? Don't you guys know God's promises? Don't you know His word? What are you doing standing here letting someone defy God? It doesn't make any sense. And even you think about his brother Eliab, an older brother, really the one that has the most power and authority and honor in his family, telling his little boy brother, go back to the sheep, and accusing David of evil. And David's like, I don't care about you. I don't care what you have to say. I'm in this with the Lord. I have faith that I'm going to take this reproach away from Yahweh today. Because I know His promises. I know what He has said. And I'm going to trust Him in it. And you know what? Even if I enter into the valley of death, which I think, hey, he goes into the valley of Goliath, man, he could be thinking of that. It's entirely possible. I will fear no evil. See, what in your life are you afraid of? What are you constantly fig-leafing about? Because every moment of every day, you can either be Saul or David, and that sounds a little cliche, but it's the truth. And we could be in a place where, hey, God kind of handles Saul in a way that He handles him, and He lifts up David to the place of nobility and anoints him as a man after my own heart. It doesn't mean David's perfect, by the way. We're going to see that. We all know that. But the difference between Saul and David is that he repents to the Lord. See, this is incredibly important for us, I think, as a church. It just is. Are we going to be people who are motivated by fear, Motivated by our comfort and security? Motivated by what people think of us? Or are we going to be people who stand in the Word and say, let's bring honor and glory to the Lord, no matter the cost? No matter the cost. Because the reality is what can man do to me? What man can do to you? The Lord's with me. And see, perfect love, or love casts out fear. Perfect love casts out fear, as it says in 1 John, right? And we love because God has first loved us. And David just exudes that reality in all the story. He is so aware of God's love for him that in the midst of being alone, we're going to see in a couple weeks, in the midst of being alone and being chased out by Saul, and in front of Achish, he has to admit that pretend that he's insane because he's all alone. And in the midst of it, he says, "Oh, magnify with me the Lord, the excellency of the Lord. Oh, taste and see the Lord is good." He's saying, I know God's promises. I'm going to bring him honor. And you know what happens? 600 of the roughest riders around come join him because they see a man who loves the Lord and won't step back from protecting and defending and honoring the Lord no matter the cost. And that is a man after God's own heart. That is what you see all throughout Scripture, from Abraham to Rahab, risking everything because she believed that Yahweh was God. And that's what we can have. We can walk through the valley of shadow of death as long as we are people who trust and know that God will deliver us if we join him in his battles. And join him in confronting those who defy him and bring reproach against him. That's what 1 Samuel 17 is all about. That's what the story of God and Goliath is about. God is in the battle of fighting against our flesh and the enemy, the kingdom of this world, and the ways of this world. And the question is, we're going to join him. Or are we just going to be like everybody else? Just kind of giving lip service or going about our way? Trust me, I like my comfort and my security. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm an American. I like my flush toilets, and I like my roof, and I like all my comforts and sensibilities. I mean, don't get me wrong. But the question is, am I willing to give those things up? Anything for the sake of loving the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my strength. Let's be those people. I want to be that. I want to be that church. I want to be that man. Let's pray. God, you are holy and righteous and awesome. And the reason why that is because you're love. You are a father loving a son, and a son loving a father by your Spirit. And because you're love, that means you're jealous. You're jealous after a people who continually whores themselves on anything and everything other than you. Lord, you're love, so therefore you're great. You have mercy upon those whom you'll have mercy. And you're love, and so therefore you're a consuming fire and destroying all that is evil. Because to tolerate it would make you evil. And that is not who you are. Lord, your Spirit it guides us into all truth. He is the great communicator. He is the author of the Scriptures. And it says that the sword of the Spirit is your word. And even Hebrews 4 says that the sword that cuts through soul and spirit and flesh and bone to the marrow is your word. And let's say your sword is love, because the Spirit is the love between the Father and the Son. And one edge is grace and the other is truth. Lord, shape us, mold us, make us the people you want us to be, whatever the cost. I remember praying that just this week with another pastor, and that made his skin crawl. But I trust you, Lord. I trust you. Whatever you want to do in me, whatever it takes, make me the man you want me to be. I pray that would be the prayer of every man in this room and every woman in this room. Lord, we trust you. There's nothing to be afraid. There's nothing that can separate us from your love. And yet shape us and make us. May we be clay that is moldable and working in your hands. I don't want to be clay that you just throw away and say, that's it, cook it, it's done, it's over. But God, you are so patient and so kind and so good. And yet you are so clear in what you want us to join you in. May we know your ways. May we know your character. May we know your word. May we know Jesus with all our heart, soul, and strength. And in his name I pray. Amen.